Welcome to another episode of Cloud Unplugged.
Just get hooked in, and then we're like, okay, guys, now you actually have to start paying the real money.
75% of the economy in the US is now based on AI.
With AI assisted, they were finding 70% more bugs, 174% more vulnerability.
The AI strategy is more for show than internal guidance.
But usually what people do when they get a report that's generated by AI, they feed it to AI to summarize it for them, right?
I would never do that.
So
I would never do that. Welcome to another episode of Cloud Unplugged. Today we are not going to do the news, actually, bit of a curveball episode. Given the fact that the news is just all AI anyway, what we thought we would do is talk about whether AI is a bubble, is it all hype, and get some data in our conversations to share about what we believe. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't a bubble. It's a little bit hard to predict. So we just thought we'd present some of the facts and talk through things. Because there's been different bits of surveys coming out. There was the Writer Enterprise, Morgan Stanley have kind of come out and said things. McKinsey, there's reports there. So yeah, Salman, is it a bubble? Do you think it's all hype? What's your opinion? And then we'll get into the data.
Of course, we will definitely get into the data, John, but it's I'm going to call it out. It's hype and bubble at the moment. Of course, it's the best piece of technology we've seen in a long time, John. I'm not denying that LLMs are great at being a very good autocomplete, but it seems to me like there's bubble. And of course, there's data that we'll mention about code quality, about what the companies have been doing recently. They're running out of tokens, budgets are being blown for Uber, and they're not really seeing any return on investment. I'm calling it out right now that it is a bit of a hype and a bubble. It's a great tool, and it should be used like a tool. And all this doom and gloom about AI, this and AI, that, and all these IPO chats, that's my opinion. But opinion needs to be backed by numbers, John, and I know you're a numbers man. So we'll talk about some numbers now. But what is your opinion, John, before we go into the details of what's going on with this thing?
So, what is my opinion? So, and this is a bit anecdotal. So I'll go for the anecdotal before we kind of get into the numbers. Anecdotally, I would say, well, not this is maybe less anecdotal, but I think the monopolization of AI from a market perspective, i.e., NVIDIA, CoreWeave, Microsoft, Google, Anthropic, etc. The way the money keeps moving around, the way the investments are offset against other investments, as in like there's capex expenditure, they're going to invest in loads of chips in NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is investing in CoreWeave and guaranteeing then the cost on the chips, to them if they don't kind of meet the targets, etc. Google getting investment from equity, kind of, I guess, raising equity to kind of de-risk themselves financially for new data center builds. So it seems quite highly concentrated financially, which feels higher risk almost because it won't take much for one of those dimensions to shift, which will then have ramifications for the others. On then the consumer side, so outside of like where all the money is and where the investment's going, sorry, just to add to that as well, the US market is really economically is predicated on AI at the moment. I think 75% of the market is all AI based, and I think it's all capex based. I think 2.5%. Now we are getting to the numbers, but 2.5% of US GDP is based on all the capex expenditure, which means they keep needing to spend capex to keep growing the GDP, which is obviously putting a lot of pressure really on AI as a whole economically, which is now raised. People have come out and kind of raised concerns. Federal Reserve has kind of come out and raised concerns, etc. But anyway, flipping that to the consumer side, I think it's because the technology is a little bit early, the value recognition isn't been seen just yet.
Yeah.
And with anything, I see it at the moment as still being quite a tool, you know, and you've got to master a tool like anything else to get good at databases or to get good at data in general, maybe Snowflake or Databricks or whatever. You've got to start to specialize in that product to do it really well, to do it justice, and to really understand how to use it. You can do anything badly, you know, and that's easy to do anything badly. So I think the adoption obviously is increasing, but the skill over the adoption is still immature. And so you're kind of on that curve. As the maturity of the skill changes and people start to get more switched on about how to work with it properly, and maybe there's more maturity on the outcomes it can drive, the pipelines, like guaranteeing the consistency of the models, and that starts to mature, then I can see that the value will start to get recognized, i.e. businesses will see the value in AI properly, especially on the agentic side. Whether, though, the capabilities and the features that people produce have high ROI on them in the end, i.e. can you really drive amazing incentives in your product using AI? Does it move the needle financially for your business because now you've got these differentiated features, and how differentiated are they, and how much value can you command on those features from others, you know, financially? Are people going to pay for that? You know, are people going to pay double the price, or is it just marginal gains? That's the bit that no one really knows. Has it cost you more than you're going to get a return on, you know, when you start to use it? And I think that's the little bit of all the unpredictability of it all. But what do you kind of agree with that, or do you not? Or do you think I'm talking?
No, I agree with that, because at the moment, you know, like with all the tech companies, there was a report out for every dollar OpenAI earn, they spend $1.22, right? So of course, all companies in the beginning are running at loss. We know this, but I think the real cost of these subscriptions and the model is going to come up quite soon, right? So right now, everyone's using the subsidized costs, because we talked about how much they're spending. You know, I don't know. OpenAI is going to spend $1.4 trillion over the next 8 to 10 years, right, on this compute. But by the way, for initial public offering that they did confidentially at the moment, the company is valued at roughly around 1 trillion. So where are they going to get this 1.4 trillion from? I don't know. But to go back to your question, are people going to get to a point where they can drive value from LLMs? And absolutely, you're absolutely right about it's. You have to use it as another tool that you have to master. They have to understand, how do I create repeatable, reproducible outputs from this, from whatever I'm doing, right? It's very good for doing a lot of things really quickly. I can do some documentation, I can spin up a proof of concept, but productionizing it and doing it over time and having an output that is maintainable, and then you can add features. Because at the moment, John, if I ask it to create me a website for Cloud Unplugged, and I don't like something, I tell it, yo, can you change this? The thing has to waste all the tokens and restart again from the beginning. Right? So it will take all the input, like, oh, let me just give you the whole website again and everything again. But if it was a developer will go, oh, you just want me to change the size of the text? No problem. I'll just open the CSS file and just change the text file. And this is what we're seeing. Some of the companies are now saying, well, hold on a second. Maybe we'll go back to the junior developers that we used to have before and get them to do some of this work. You know, like this is happening in Meta. And people were fixated about, oh, who's spending the most tokens? That's like saying, oh, I have a chef in the kitchen, and I want to know how much gas he used. No, I don't care about what you produce. I don't care about how good the food is, but how much gas and electricity did you use to cook the food? That's what it seems like. All these companies fixated over. Oh, I have a leaderboard. I know, like Uber wasted all their budget, and so did Microsoft on AI spending. And people, without understanding the use of the tool, were using this thing and getting too excited. And of course, I got excited as well, and I still get excited. John, it's like a roulette machine. Like, oh yeah, let me just do one more prompt. I think you'll get it, right? Let me just do another prompt. I think you'll get it. But it's just predicting the next token, and
But I
you
think
need
the
to
risk as
understand that.
well, economically, if you've inflated something on one side, so say that the hype is a hype,
Yeah,
to what extent it's a hype is the question. Do you know, like, how realistic is the value that's been promised? And that's on a spectrum, of like how much value can you really get from it in the end, and no one really knows. So if you kind of see it as abstractions, you've got that on one hand. But if the hype is a hype, and then you've got technologies on the other side, so like robo taxis or
yeah,
self-driving cars, etc., that start to displace taxi drivers. So you've got, like, I don't know, 300,000 or however many jobs, taxi driving jobs or whatever it is in the UK, I think, something like that anyway. And you are then inflating something on the other side or incentivizing on the other side. And then the costs change, i.e. the cost profiles change, and the economics start to disbalance. So it starts to distort the economics. You've just displaced a economic stream. So what you've done is you've just removed in your country, really, a whole financial structure. Wasn't massive necessarily, but it's a whole market in itself: taxi driver market, cars, rentals, car rentals, etc. Obviously, it's a chain of things that get disrupted within it. People have got higher purchase cars because they're attached to it, etc. All that starts to get disrupted, and then you've got a robo taxi owned by one company.
yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, you've almost like started to tilt the economy in a direction that maybe isn't ready to be tilted into before you've started to maybe risk the displacement of another economic structure. I think that's where it's more, I guess if I was to look at it objectively, there's more apprehension on such high impact for something that hasn't really been fully understood. It's almost like we're all racing in a direction, and it's kind of carnage. Do you know what I mean? It's like everyone's trying to get out of a football stadium all at the same time, and everyone's like scrambling and running out, and you're like, and there's no one really being like, well, actually, if we just slow down and we're just all steadily kind of going in an orderly fashion, it's less risk than us all stampeding,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of out, right? So that's kind of how it feels a bit.
Yeah, and for sure, John, the economic impact that you talk about, of course, is going to impact some of the industries, like you talked about, robo taxis coming in and impacting the taxi drivers. So, the technology advancements happen all the time, and they do have an impact. Let's go from like horses down to cars. That was the whole industry that got impacted, and I think what the weird thing about all of this AI hype is how it's overhyped by the people who are behind building these tools,
Oh
right?
yeah,
All the Anthropics, take your Anthropics, take your OpenAI. Every day they're coming in and they're saying, "Oh, we're not going to need any developers." Oh, I came into this podcast today. One of these, I'm not going to say, well, okay, it's the people from Anthropic. I came to this podcast today and I opened 50 pull requests on the way to the taxi. Well, okay, okay, fine. Yeah, you did it, of course. Now, I don't know how much of that is truth and how much of that is just, oh, we need to do an IPO. Let's just quickly get it out just so we can get our names up. Now, let me give you an example, right? When the Steam engine came out, because these people are saying, no, you don't need software developers. When the Steam engine came out, people are like, oh, right, we won't need coal anymore because Steam engine is so much more efficient. So we won't need that much coal. But what people fail to realize, if you have something that's super efficient, the usage of that thing goes up. So everybody started using steam engines in factories now, and in ships and everywhere else. The coal usage actually went up. It went up. So it's the same kind of thing. So I don't really like the narrative. Of course, speaking as a developer and a platform person, I don't really like this doom and gloom narrative. Okay, we've got this new technology. No, nobody will need it. And now people are starting to realize that actually, as you say, John, maybe this technology is not all what we hoped it was. I know people keep talking about AGIs around the corner. This thing can't even predict something properly. You give it the same prompt twice, it's going to give you something else and start hallucinating, start making things. So for me, John, it's overhyped, and these companies now at the moment seems like they're racing to do an IPO just to cash in still on the hype.
Yeah, I
So
kind of agree with that.
OpenAI have just done a confidential listing of IPO. That means they're working with the authorities to figure out what are the steps they need to do, and we can't see the details yet. Nothing's been made public. What their income is, how much their debts are, what their revenues are, what the risks are. I'll be very interested to know when that report comes out how much they've spent. There's estimations around the world at the moment. People estimate how much they've actually spent. That's when we're going to know the real picture behind. Well, I don't know if we will know the real picture. That will know the real picture behind how much is actually costing for these services to be built and consumed. And that is, John, when people are going to have to pay the real money for this,
Yeah.
right? Anthropic yesterday announced this Fable model, which is based on Mythos, which is like closed, nobody can use it, and that thing is 10 times more expensive in terms of input tokens and 50 times more expensive in terms of output tokens, right? It's like a drug dealer saying, I'm going to give you, and then they reset it everybody's limits yesterday just so people can try this new drug for free and then just get hooked in. And they were like, okay, guys, now you actually have to start paying the real money once you're hooked in.
I'm interested, but do you think the with 4.8 to like Fable, do you reckon it's like astronomically worth what was the rate in token? It's saying it's like 2.5 times more expensive, was it, or something? I
Yeah,
think it's
it's I
something
think
like that, wasn't it? So I guess
yeah,
the question is,
10.
do you get 2.5? That's if that is correct. 2.5 times more value comparatively from 4.8 to Fable, and it's like, well, I doubt that. I doubt it's like the multiplier, like a value is kind of true. But yeah, I kind of agree with all the people that have the most to gain control the narrative in the media, and they're the ones that are all on the hype. What is funny though is, like we were
Yeah.
saying last episode, that all the students are kind of booing every time AI is mentioned. So there's obviously
Yeah.
civil, unrest,
Civil unrest, John.
civil unrest on what's kind of going
AI.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is, and I don't think that isn't true. But yeah, if we get to some of the facts, I don't know if you saw this, but the Federal Reserve has flagged AI as a top systematic
Okay.
systemic risk. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, they've said that the market's stretched, kind of another term for bubble. ECB, they're calling it a bubble.
All right. Okay.
It's all started to move, as in like I think everyone's kind of looking and being like, okay, there's a lot of expenditure happening. There's a lot of investment, loads of capex spend. That's great economically. 75% of the economy in the US is now based on AI. Okay. So I think everyone's a bit like, okay, this feels a little bit unnerving now. It's not going to take much. I think for one of the something to happen. I think on April the 28th, there was a report that suggested OpenAI was missing their internal targets, kind of growth targets. That dropped the share price of Oracle and Nvidia by 3%. And then Broadcom and AMD, they got affected. So that goes to show how fragile the market is on the earnings. And the same for basically what could happen is that could kind of continue. So OpenAI could come out and give their earnings. They could be way, way off financially than what everyone was expecting. And then the hyperscalers are a bit like, oh, maybe we need to cut our capex then if the growth looks like it's slowing down or isn't there. And then they start to pull back, and then the investment in the chip starts to pull back, and that affects Nvidia, and then on it goes, and it starts to trickle around and through the economy. That's, I imagine, what is probably likely to happen if the forecasted growth isn't being matched in the hype. But I guess we'll see. And then on this other side, and some of this you can kind of take with a bit of a pinch of salt, but because I think it's a bit questionable. But MIT, this is back in 2025, so things have changed. But they had 95% of 52 enterprise organizations said they had no return on investment. I think they spent 30 to 40 billion across something like 300 Gen AI initiatives. This is coming from this is like Yale Insights, and they all said like 95% basically didn't get anything off the back of the 30 to 40 billion. And then PwC, they've said that 56% of CEOs also reporting getting nothing from their AI efforts. And Writers May this year, 2026, I think this Q1, 75% of executives admit that AI strategy is more for show than internal guidance. And 48% call adoption a massive disappointment. And 39% have no formal plan to drive revenue from AI. Are all the different statistics. Thoughts on those little numbers?
Sounds like when you go to the parents-teacher meeting and the teacher is so telling you the report is really bad for your child, and you're a bit disappointed because it showed so much promise when it joined the school, and you're like, yeah, my kid is gonna fly through it, ace all the exams. And just to add to that, John, a lot of work is being done by. There's a lot of paper. I'll just pick one. CodeRabbit did a study on some work. They use these models different. It doesn't matter what model you pick, John. That doesn't make any difference, right? Yes, some models are going to be a little bit better than others, and the usage of the models absolutely depends on how you use it, is how you get the most out of it, right? But that's people like, oh, you need to have the right skills, you need to write this, you have to write guardrails, blah blah. Fine, yeah, of course, yes, you do. What they found, John, was with AI assisted, they were finding 70% more bugs. So CodeRabbit published out this report, and they found 174% more vulnerability. And this is not just them on their own. Cornell University have done a bunch of these studies, and they're published online. You can find them, and maybe we can put in the show notes afterwards. And they're finding that not just that the capex numbers that you're saying, John, are looking bad, though they're reflecting what is the actual reality. People are not seeing value. That's one thing. Not seeing value. You need to. Uber said they can't really attribute the budget that they blew for their AI in the first half of the year, for the whole year. The CEO cannot point it to any feature that they released using AI. Well, that's fine, right? You can't see any value. But at the same time, people got these hard metrics where they're like, yeah, it's good in places, but we also have other problems. I've got more bugs.
But to be fair, though, if you are going all out on AI, and all the code is now kind of contributed by AI, then anything that's released just by default has been AI generated and AI contributed, which then means technically there's then some form of value, even if there's 56 billion more bugs, even if it's kind of sloppy code, even if it's like got more security vulnerabilities. So I guess, depending on the numbers, you could look at depending on the spin on the data, you could be like, yeah, it's all AI code generated and we're shipping. But it's like, yeah, because you rolled out AI like across you told everybody to use AI, and then by proxy, all your features obviously are now going to be generated by AI. It doesn't necessarily mean the outcome was good.
Exactly. How are you going to compare that to what you were doing last year without AI? And of course, you can compare that because like, how much money did we make? Right? Yes, the global markets, the impact, the economics impact, but this stuff, it seems a bit absurd because there was this report from there's this news come out for the last couple. It's a little bit old now. There's some work then done by Deloitte for the Australian government, where they spend a lot of money. I think $250,000 Australian dollars on doing this report and analysis for the Australian government. And then a person was reviewing it, and then there was a reference in the report of because Deloitte will produce a report. You need to do this to get better at whatever, right? So the person found out that all the references in the report were made up. They were hallucinated, right? They were all hallucinations from AI. So the report we can extrapolate, was basically generated by AI, right? They're generated by AI. Now, the person was like, oh, what is this? This is kind of useless, right? But usually what people do when they get a report that's generated by AI, they feed it to AI to summarize it for them, right? So that's what the people generally do.
Oh my god,
People generally do.
I would never do that.
So
I would
Deloitte's
never do that. You'd never catch me doing that.
Deloitte's response was, "Yeah, fair enough. The reference was probably made up, but don't worry, it still doesn't change the strategy that's outlined in the document. The strategy is still the same." And this is another a Canadian lecturer, a researcher. Again, she got some work done and read it, and she found out that ChatGPT, I don't know which one it was, it generated a reference that belonged to her that she hasn't even published. Right, so so it just seems to me that all the hyperscalers, because who wins from this, right? The people who've got the model, people who train the model, so the chips that you build on, who runs the infrastructure, and the circle that you talked about in the beginning of friends just investing in each other. They're the ones who are getting value from it. Um, and yeah, I've used AI for various things. Of course, it makes a improvement everywhere, but we're starting to see that there's so many issues related to it, and this is across the board, John. This is across the board. So we, of course, will come to a conclusion in a few minutes about what it is, but it doesn't seem like it doesn't live up to the hype. It's not living up to the hype for me, for sure. It's not
Yeah,
living up to the hype.
I kind of agree. I think my prediction will be that someone's going to miss their earnings, or multiple companies will miss their annual earnings. I think then the run rate of those companies obviously starts to reduce because obviously it's forecasted against something. I think then the hyperscalers will probably start to cut back on the investments a little bit. Market cap will drop and have massive impact. I think also maybe if any Fortune 100 company starts to say that they're going to cancel AI agent rollout, or or maybe they get like hacked and then they're like, actually we need to pause, or that then obviously also has high impact to the market and adoption because obviously that's risk based. Then because of the impact, then the Fed start to raise rates because of inflation. The rates then make it more expensive for AI companies to raise capital. And it obviously then it goes, and then it means that there's less investment going into all these AI companies because the cost of the capital is too high, because the interest rates have gone up, and then all of a sudden it all starts to turn in itself a little bit, and then it kind of starts to stay. That is my, if I was to predict, I reckon that's probably what will happen. I don't, that's nothing to do with people still not having success with AI though. But I think it's just more on the hype.
I kind of agree, but at the same time, what will also happen, a little bit disagree on this, because you might remember, John, when Uber came out, when they did the IPO they were funded in 2010, right? So they started in 2010. And they were unprofitable till like 2013. For 13, 14 years, they didn't make any money.
Yeah.
Right. And I think these companies are going to do the same thing. They'll get floated. They'll be unprofitable for years and years and years. And then eventually, because initially, the reason why Uber wasn't profitable, but of course, because they're investing in infrastructure, the system itself, and they're undercutting the taxi services. And then it was way cheaper to catch, they were doing offers for Uber drivers, and eventually got it. And that's what these AI companies are doing. And when they get floated, it will be the same, right? So when
I don't know
Meta
about
got
that
floated,
though. I think the only difference is Uber was different because it was a single company that only specialized in taxis, and everything was invested. So their trajectory was all about capturing the market, taking the market demand. These are established companies that have been around a really long time that don't just do AI, who've got market share already IPO'd. So there's a lot of share price in there. And they're reusing their own capital. So they're investing their own capital into that direction, which is like, so I think the impact could be higher, obviously, to investment and share price and everything else. And I think that's what could tank or not necessarily tank the economy. I don't think that would, but I think it could at least start to have a negative impact if things aren't as everybody would hope, on the happy path, I guess, is
Yeah, and
yeah,
I mean, fair enough. Like, there's shortages for like transformers for these data centers because all of this stuff still requires data centers, right? You need to still build all these data centers based on the projection that people are saying. These companies are saying we need $14 trillion worth of infrastructure to be able to capture to be able to meet the demands for the customers. But on the other side, we're seeing a bunch of these AI projects are getting cancelled. The consumption is going down. So I think you are right. Maybe the impact will still be the same. Like it might not be as hyped when it goes IPO, but I think people will still buy into the hype because these companies are masterful at turning up and making a high level statement saying, "Oh, I haven't opened one of the Claude creator just turned up and said for 6 months I haven't opened an IDE. Like I've not
yeah,
looked at any piece of code that's been created." I don't
crazy.
understand that part. I actually don't understand that part. Maybe I'm not using the tool correctly, John. But
Yeah, I think
mm,
I think you're a
I'm
denier.
I'm a denier, John. I'm a
You're a
cynic. Call
denier.
me a cynic, John.
You're like a flat
Call me a
earther,
cynic. A flat
basically.
earther.
You just don't believe in, just don't believe in these things. But
You
yeah,
need
no,
to. I know. I like John. You keep me grounded like this, right? I'm a flat earther.
but yeah, I think it's been good. I think it's been good to kind of like, we obviously don't, no one really knows how things are going to play out. We can't see into the future, but I think it's good just to kind of pull on the numbers. I think there's still a lot more possibilities, and a lot could change.
Yeah.
Regulation as well. We haven't even spoken about regulation. That's a whole other topic.
Oh, that's
At
the
what
whole
point,
thing. Yeah.
what impact that would have when that starts to happen, etc. So I do
Yeah.
think it's,
Correct.
at the moment, it's too much on the happy path. Something's going to give. Don't think that means it's not necessarily valuable. It's a synopsis. I
Correct.
think, isn't it? Yeah.
So on
Cool.
the John, before you end, on the scale of 1 to 10, how hyped this technology is versus what the reality is. So the higher the number, the better it is.
Oh, the higher the number, the better it is. I'd probably
The
say
higher
it's
the number.
on a. I would say it's on maybe a 7.
Hmm.
I would say, because I think, well, market I'd say is on a 9. The hype of
Market
the
is
value to a consumer, i.e., a company trying to use it, or I'd say was probably on a 7, because I think, or maybe a little bit less, because I think there's still a lot you can do to make it
Hmm.
good, and I think there's still a lot of improvements that are going to come out that make it much more high value for businesses.
Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah,
Of
what about
course.
you?
Yeah, I think I'll go with like 8, a little bit higher than that. But we're talking about technology as it is today. What comes out in 6 months' time? Don't know.
Yeah,
But AGI is too far away, man. There's no AGI. Right?
exactly,
Richard Dawkins
exactly.
said animals are not intelligent either. So how is a Python script going to be more intelligent than an
You
animal?
just wait. You just wait, Salman. You just wait when we're all. The next podcast episode is 2 AI. AI avatars having a chat, and we're just out having lunch. Right. Anyway, we better wrap this up. It's been a bit different, more fun to kind of get into the detail rather than just the hyperficial news. But we shall speak to everybody next week.
Cheers.